traditional is what people did in the past, of course, and the new modern age is what's new. So a traditional person or a traditional wife is one who believes in the old school, who believes that we should continue the traditions or the lifestyles of our parents, of our grandparents, and so on. The modern woman would be one that says, I don't want to follow my mother. I don't want to be like my mother. I want to be different because I saw my mother struggle in this way. You see a lot of women today say, oh, the new woman is not going to let you walk all over her like the other ones used to. Like you're not going to do that to us because this is a new generation of women. And we bite back, we fight back, what have you, which is nonsense because if men really wanted to take us out, they
Within your culture, what would you consider modern versus traditional?
What's weird is that when you ask the question, I immediately thought about myself, my understanding of what the word modern versus traditional is like. I feel like even though I was raised traditionally, I dabble in the modern, right? I flirt with it, but I never get too
You don't
into it.
commit.
Yeah, I don't commit. And here's something that's really interesting. Because even in the just random thought I had about it, I realized that men have never really changed. Because I was trying to think, is like, what's different from me than is different from my dad and his grandfather, other than the obvious, right? The way we dress, maybe our beard is lined up, maybe we use Beijing enhancement on our hairline. Like, what is really different from men? So, what's weird is that I'm like, nothing. That we all like to sit down, drink beer, watch sports. There's really nothing different. I can't really draw too many differences between the men that I view as traditional in my family and myself. What is different though
Right.
is the lady, so it's usually not only the ladies, but what men will do to please them. And I feel like that is where the conversation starts, the interactions between men and women. And, and as it relates to individual dynamics, intersexual dynamics, family dynamics, that is where that whole conversation happens. And we start to you see the difference between traditional and modern.
I like how you broke that down. You thought about the men of old versus the men of today.
I actually like it. And just to add a little bit, I always like to think about when we were, like humanity in the cave, right? What has changed from there? Because the man was the one going out, bringing the resources to the house, hunting and all that. The woman was staying in the house, and that was where the tradition comes from. Like she was staying, taking care of the kids. Your feedback. So
Everyone can just mute in between.
So yes, I think women have evolved or developed in different areas. And if we bring it to a more modern, more than the cave, I would say when everything started, when women had the right to vote, and then from there they had the right for education and other things that came with. So now they feel more obviously empowered, right? And it starts the competition that I can do just as much as you can, in case of men. But I will define traditional. Well, the traditional society is different than traditional and modern society. I don't put it as men and women, but it's a society that makes you modern or traditional in a way, the culture as well. So what's the difference? Or what was the question? What is right traditional?
So I wanted people to define what modern versus traditional means to them, because there's questions that are kind of gonna go
Right.
in line. We're gonna
So
unravel.
to me, I would say is the norms, what that you follow, is the values, the norms, the customs, traditions that you follow, and you're not just letting yourself go by, the upgrades pretty much. Oh, we know how to do this now, so we're gonna we be in constant change. So you keep your traditions and your values as well. To me.
Would anyone else like to chime in, like their version when they think traditional versus modern, what it means to them?
I know for me, because and people think this is so controversial when I say this, but I don't think that traditional women exist. I don't think traditional men or women exist or have existed since before World War II. Because, at least here in our country, in America, because at that time you kind of saw the whole entire family dynamic change because our men were going back to war and the women were having to take up factory jobs and things like that. And since then, in most American households, until about like the 50s or the 60s, the women didn't go back into the house. And so for me, it's like now it's still the same way. Like, that's why I always laugh at the 50-50 argument, because when do women not do some kind of work, essentially, or like that traditionalism of what we have an idea of? And so that's kind of where I think of it as, is like the education level. Women were always getting an education, whether they were utilizing it or not, you know, is the difference. Now they're utilizing it and actually working in their field, versus they're going to college to get a husband like they did in the 50s or 60s. So I really just don't think that even now, like, traditionalism is kind of dead.
That's a good take, because women were getting their education. They just weren't using it. Somebody came up of mute. I'm not sure. Was it?
Yeah, it is me. I was just gonna say real quick, to me, the difference between modern and traditional is the difference between almost like principally conservative versus liberal. Conservative is nowadays more open-minded for sure than, in the past. However, do I sound okay? Okay, I just want to make sure. But so, as compared to, I don't know, decades ago. However, they're still rooted in a foundation, in a principle, well, this is kind of going by the wayside, but their faith, their focus on the nuclear family, where modern, it's kind of like anything goes. Hey, do what you want to do. If it works, whatever, as long as you're happy. So that's what I would say the main thing is, conservative versus liberal. So.
Patty, did you come off? I thought I saw you.
Well, my views in traditional and modern is like what most of y'all said. It has to do with politics. It has to do with society. It has to do with the day and age, like with how the kids are today and how the older generation were, where the morals and values are so completely different, and how society's really changed our view on things, where now it's so easy to cancel people for speaking your mind, or or just one wrong saying by accident, or anything like that can just literally get you your life in a collapse, which is, I think, is very absurd. Um, it's very interesting to think about. Well, because I'm coming from this modern world, right? So I'm from a generation. What is it? Millennial. I'm a millennial. What's a 20? I always forget it. Is it a millennial? Is it Gen Z?
I think you're Gen Z.
Gen Z is 23.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Gen Z. So, but I think being part of I really don't fit in with my generation. I feel because I feel like I'm a little bit more old school. It's how I was raised. I still grew up without having computers, and then grew up with the computers. I like, you know what I'm saying? I grew up with life as a struggle and life as it is easy. So I sort of understand in the in between of how it is and how it was, which I'm grateful for. And most of my values I consider are a lot more traditional than it is modern, um, because I feel like it was more of the right way of doing things. Uh, I feel like my generation's gotten a little too soft, if that makes sense. Um, but that's my opinion.
I agree with that. Curves or Amir, did you want to chime in?
I didn't even hear the question. I came in late.
The question is, what are your views on what traditional or modern is? Like, what in your view is modern or traditional? Does it have to come with women? Are we only talking about women, or are we talking about culture?
I'm talking about culture as a whole, and then we have other questions that are kind of gonna
Okay.
to that.
I constantly go into this. You guys know that I'm always talking about this, so this is all in my subject. But I agree with Coach K and Saida with the idea that they were saying that, you know, traditional is what people did in the past, of course, and the new modern age is what's new. So a traditional person or a traditional wife is one who believes in the old school, who believes that we should continue the traditions or the lifestyles of our parents, of our grandparents, and so on. The modern woman would be one that says, you know, I don't want to follow my mother. I don't want to be like my mother. I want to be different because I saw my mother struggle in this way. You see a lot of women today say, oh, the new woman is not going to let you walk all over her like the other ones used to. You know, like, you're not going to do that to us because this is a new generation of women. And we bite back, we fight back, what have you, which is nonsense, because if men really wanted to take us out, they really could. Thing is, men are very nice. But so, yeah, back to the traditional or modern. What's her name? Simply Indy said that there's no such thing, as a traditional woman today. That's absolute nonsense. Now, could you argue that women aren't as traditional as they used to be? Yes, that's true, but that's also because we live in a more technologically advanced world. But to argue that there aren't women who follow the traditions of old is an absurdity. There still are. Are they rare? Very much. So, right. So that's my argument.
I mean, you have a point about having women fighting for everything, but I feel as though women nowadays sort of take it too much to, like, they take advantage of it too much, you know, and they, well, I'm not saying all of you guys, I'm saying in general, I feel like as though they take advantage of society and politics and everything like that into their own hands. And
who takes advantage? Who are you talking about right now? Who takes
just
advantage of
women,
society?
like she was, like Amira was talking about, like how women, like, of being traditional and modern, like how women fight for everything. Yes, that is true. Women do fight for everything, and they as they are supposed to. But I feel as though nowadays women take advantage of politics and society too much, uh, more so than they did before. In
Like
the
their
best and worst
involvement.
ways, but a lot of the time I've started to realize it's a lot of it has been fairly bad than it has been good.